What is important to be short for us, or my experience, it was when the crisis starts. So most of the local shops was closed, especially in Berlin, and we see a growing online community and also a growing online business. So a lot of them try to understand the customers and to get even more revenue and. So they're starting again with things, investing in things like newsletters. You can't imagine before a newsletter, you know. But now the consultees around the world spending so much money in it to creating newsletters, doing ABC tests, and so it's amazing what happens. So I think this was one of the most changes to understand how it works, to pick them up online on the right time, bring it to you, give them your products, but also the cognitive experience, the affective experience, and then bring them to buy your product. So yeah, just to be short.
Okay, Maria?
It's a really difficult question because I think everything changed in that period. We stay at home, we have different needs, we had money because we stopped going out to have dinner or have lunch. And for example, in Spain, all the small stores at the beginning closed. So all the companies that had an e-commerce grow very fast. And from that point, at least our government started promoting or giving grants for the small sellers to do a website and to allow them to buy. And I don't know if it happens in other countries, but for example, in our case, when the lockdown was removed, the consumer grows very fast, and there were not available a lot of products. So we have a problem with the demand because we have more demand than offers. And I think COVID, of course, changed us. And if you see at the European plans, for example, Next Generation, I don't know if you know it, that it's the first time that all the European countries agree to invest a huge amount of money. And one part, maybe I think it's about 30%, is directly related with the digitalization, and especially for small companies to try to grow that kind of digitalization and the marketing digitalization, and to help them to sell. So I think change a lot our behavior and change a lot as well the ways that the companies were selling products. And I think that are like the main points.
All right, thank you very much. And Paweł?
So please let me present some conclusions from research conducted by me and my colleague, Professor Agnieszka Żbikowska, about consumption in pandemic times. We conducted research using an integrated methodology, and it was based on a survey method. We studied 750 respondents, and after that we conducted 17 deep interviews. We wanted to understand more, to explain some indications and so on. And of course, we analyzed secondary sources of information and what was published about consumer behavior during pandemic. And we found out that consumer behaviors were changed during pandemics. Some new lifestyles, consumption patterns, different value systems occurred. But I would say that the pandemic didn't create many new consumption patterns. Some trends existed before pandemic, but I would say that the situation reinforce these trends, so strengthened some trends, for example, ecological trends. And considering consumer behavior trends in this pandemic time, we could say that consumer, I would say now, are more price-oriented and useful. More than half people in Europe and also in Poland indicated that they are more price-oriented, more economical. They are looking usefulness, good relationship among price and the quality. Consumers are more digital. Many activities were moved to the internet and more ecological. For example, in Poland, most Poles, more than 90% admitted that ecology is important to them, even during a pandemic, because in this time they earned less money, they had not good economical situation, but they try to focus. Of course, there are on it. Of course, there are only declarations, and reality differ from it, but it was a tendency. And I would say that our research, in this research, we didn't notice significant changes in the volume of purchasing goods and services. If less was bought, it was caused by the situation. They bought less shoes, less clothes, and, for example, more cleaning products. But I think that something changed in attitudes. And it was inspired by this situation. And many people said that they were thinking about overconsumption, for example. They was going to buy something just to support seller. And so on and so on. So we identified this kind of attitudes. And maybe one more thing. If we, I would like to present a micro point of view. For example, in deep interview, we had 60 years old woman, and she said that this pandemic time changed her, that a lot of changes were in her life and in her customer behavior. She lived in the countryside. First time, it was first time in her life for some months, and he changed her point of view. She spent more time with nature. She resigned from often purchasing behavior, and so on and so on. So she said that she understood that we can use fewer clothes, wear them longer, resign from eating meat every day, and so on. So I think that we could identify this kind of attitudes.
Okay, thank you. Thomas wanted to add something?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And just Maria says something, so Paweł also, so thanks for that. Just an example, you know, because we are talking about things like changing from offline to online, and then the things happen. But it's a point what you say, the completely mindset change, as I experienced, because I also working as a digital director in ergonomic branch. And what we experienced, that the customers are more focused on health, because after the lockdown comes, they have to stay at home. And then they experience, hey, I have a bad chair. Yeah, it's painful for me. This and this and this. So, and they came to us. The older people starts, and then we get, at the last years, students, and then the customers going younger and younger. So they are focused now more on health, science-stable products, because they say, okay, I need a good chair to sit good, just for my health, but also doing something for the climate crisis. So the completely mindset change, yeah? But of course, we have customers with money who can spend the money and buy these chairs. But of course, we have people with low income, they can't. So there's also a gap between. But yeah, of course, the mindset changed a lot. We are more focused, like things you talk about, the overconsumption and then. The people are more focused. They're asking themselves, okay, do I need it? Do my kids that need it, like a PlayStation or what we're talking about, because it's Christmas now, so things like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Maria?
I think it would be very interesting to repeat your study just now, because we think that the situation was going to change us. But for example, I'm going again to the stores to buy shoes, to buy clothes. So it has changed us, but I think not us. We thought that it was going to change us. And I would like to ask you, how do you answer? How do you prepare your questions? Because of course, if you ask me, I want be sustainable, and I want. So there are some questions that are like polite, and everybody are going to answer that yes. No? Do you believe in green? Yes, of course. Do you? So what?
There were a lot of questions, and in this quantitative part, we tried to answer how much they are consumed before pandemic and during pandemic time. So if they they buy more or less quantity. How money they spend on different categories of products. And we try to also study attitudes toward problems. Once again, it was compared to previous situation before pandemic time and during pandemic. We try in deep interviews. We tried to estimate if those changes will be durable or not. And of course, it is difficult to say. As you mentioned, people come back to old patterns, but we identify 4 segments of customers. We considered 2 variables. The first one is how significant was changes, significant or not, and what is the tendency, increasing or decreasing. And for example, there is the first group we called those people COVID experienced, and in this group people were physically or emotionally experienced by COVID-19. And in this group, people decided to make dramatic, I would say, behavioral changes, and they are consistently implementing it. But we have other groups. For example, we call them solving in the sand. And in this group, consumers try to change behavior at the beginning of the pandemic. But if circumstances were changed, we are coming back to the normal situation, they resign from those patterns. But there is one more group inspired by change, and there is a very important group from my point of view, because those people change their behavior slowly, but it is related to their attitudes. They change attitudes, way of thinking. For example, this woman never thought before about overconsumption, but in this situation they started to do it. And I think that this behavior could be durable.
May I ask, did you see some can we get some factors so about the older of them, how old they are, and so it would be nice to get some more input, especially for this group.
There are some, maybe one more thing. We identified that there are statistical dependencies, because people who are better educated, who are the women more often than men, decided to change behavior. So economical factors are very important, and people in crisis, this economy is the most important for them. But if, for example, people who work remotely more often decided to be more ecological than people who just go to work. Yeah?
Okay, if I add something to this discussion, because generally the phenomenon of COVID-19 was mostly associated with the internet. So the best is to ask Dr. Google what the Dr. Google is thinking about this, the COVID. And actually Google was expert from the Google, identified 4 main trends they could observe how the customer behaviors and also the company's behavior change. And actually, all these 4 trends, they said that they make closer customers to the companies, because even if we were close at home, but it was the only one chance to communicate and to so the companies were more aware of the consumer needs. Or maybe not the needs, but the new ways of satisfying those needs. And the customers are really require particular needs. So the first trend is the consumer are driving business to the innovation. I think that one of the best examples is of our very big Polish company, InPost. InPost, which is the company where they are actually delivering the boxes, the gifts to the products to not to the home, but to the safe boxes, and then we can take it out. At the very beginning, after the COVID appeared, for 2-3 months, the company observed a very big drop of delivering the products. And of course, one of the reasons was that they were in shock, so they didn't order the products. But another one was very simple. They were just afraid to type anything on the screen, the same like with the ATMs. So immediately, they introduced, in 1-2 weeks, they introduced on the mobile application the possibility to open without touching the screen. And it was really, really good start for it, and right now everybody, all of us, so we are using this. And the idea was just because of the COVID. The second trend, consumer expectation are fluid across the categories. So generally, because especially on the Polish market, we get some experience with online banking, on online insurance. So we were familiar how to do it, but we were not experienced with, for example, online purchasing clothes or other products. So usually customers try to convert the knowledge, the skills they have already on the banking market or insurance market into the tangible goods market and so on, and they start require the same services like they already have at the markets. They have this experience. And then the third one, the consumer has a heightened need to live for the live information. I don't know if you remember, but before the COVID, actually, of course, some of the companies really care about the live information on every single social media and also on the website. But the majority of them, not. So there was the information, especially on the website, was very, very old. And actually, nobody cares about the correct telephone number, addresses, and so on. Suddenly, everybody require information which is changing even minutes to minutes, not that day by day. So it's very, very quickly updated because you never know. If there is any big problem, so you cannot move to this place, so you can go to this one. So this increase the company's awareness of delivering a live information to the customers. And finally, customers are driving major shift in the demand. So we don't want to say that the demand was declining, but as you said, that it was changing to the different products, like those who give us more entertainment at home, sports, and so on, then to resign on purchasing another furnitures and so on, which we know that it's not very useful right now, and we have to do it. So I can say that it was not the same changes in the behavior, not like after the crisis 2009, that was really, really big drop in purchasing some products. But here there was mostly the change of the type of the products we purchase. Any questions, any comments you want to add concerning how the COVID-19 influenced on consumer behavior, maybe from the different perspective of different markets? Do you have some? Oh, okay. So.
Thank you. Maciej Tuszkiewicz, Department of Business Informatics and International Accounting, University of Economics in Katowice. So my experience is with customers, but on the business side. So the company I work for is mostly contracting, having transactions with other companies. So something really different from what you're talking about, because not customers, just human people, but companies mostly. Something we've noticed is that during the COVID, the first years and the first months, there was a big drop in transactions that didn't have to happen. So the companies were trying to push back from any of the investments that they were doing, but it's not disappearing in the nature. And finally, after a year or two, you can see the big increase in sales and transactions. And overall, when you look into 3 or 4 year period, you'll notice that the amount of transactions remain the same in the volume, in the values, just that they've been moved. So that's something that I've noticed from the company's perspective, that if you have business-to-business transactions, they will move to 1 to 2 years. And something that Professor Maria was asking is something interesting. It's less with the customers, but you were asking about durability of the changes of the pandemic on the people. And we've been having cathedral research regarding the scientists and even more the teachers. So we've been trying to find out how the teachers will use ICT and generally informatics after the COVID and during the COVID, and how the quality of our teaching has changed. And something which is interesting, based on the activity theory, we've been researching all over the world, but mostly the European scientists and the European teachers, is that during the pandemic, everyone notices that it's plain and simple that the quality is worse. But based on the activity theory, we've noticed that people were forced to use it. And even though they didn't really want to use it, they had to learn. And since they already learned, they found some good pieces of things that they could use during their teaching. Unfortunately, most of them still may consider that it's more of the source to put information on the platform, but as they were forced to use it for a year, 2 years maybe in some of the universities, that the changes will be durable, and most of them do say that they will be using ICT much more in the future, which we can notice because even now we are using more classrooms and etc., etc. So there is a chance and possibility that changes are durable, but it's a case of the experience, it's a case of gender, and just personal attitude towards information systems. Thank you, that's just my input.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this very important voice. Any other comments? Or the other perspective? Okay, please, excuse me.
Hi, so I can offer the perspective. I work for a technology company, and what we offer is cloud infrastructure that powers a lot of like startups and businesses, right? So with COVID, what exactly happened was all businesses had to suddenly pivot and go online. So we saw some very interesting trends, especially cloud. Compared to a lot of the other businesses, we saw huge spikes in usage. And a lot of the businesses, and especially when we analyzed trends, we started seeing, in one sense, consumers' behavior really showing up, right? A lot of people were at home. They were streaming a lot more. They were playing a lot more games. So video streaming, gaming, education, all of those started showing really positive upward trends. So that's, in some way, consumer behavior. But I also what I want to offer here as part of another perspective is just the availability of data and what companies did with that data, right? Like one was consumer behavior, but then though that consumer behavior just providing companies a lot of data that they didn't have access to before, right? For example, there are companies that have offline stores. For example, if you today go and see a shoe that you really like at a store, but then choose to buy it online, companies earlier were struggling with attributing whether this consumer came to us from the offline store, the retail store that we had, or they went first to our shopping site or website and then bought it. But suddenly with retail stores getting shut down, it was all online, so there was just so much access to data. What are consumers buying? What shoes is working? What products are really working? So businesses now had the availability of all of this data and, of course, access to technology like machine learning that uses all of this data to then position those specific products that consumers are really buying. Okay, if these are hot products, then we're just going to sell a lot more of those products to consumers. And that is the cycle, right? Like, that's also affecting consumer behavior. So.
I would just like to introduce time horizons into this conversation because I think it's really, really important because we're talking about before, during, and after the pandemic as if we've even gone through that cycle yet, which we have not really gone through that cycle yet, right? There are still people getting COVID. There are still people in the hospital and dying from COVID all over the world, right? We're still trying to understand what COVID-19 will mean for us going forward. You go to an airport and some people are masked, some people are not masked, right? So we're at the end stages perhaps, but we're still actually in the crisis itself. Also, I think that when we do research comparing COVID behavior to pre-COVID behavior, it's dangerous because what we're doing is comparing emergency response behavior to non-emergency response behavior. And I think that we will get a lot more data when we compare how people responded in COVID-19 to how they consume when there is a hurricane on the horizon, when there is a predicted tsunami, when there is an economic crisis, et cetera. Emergency consumption compared to other emergency consumption. Because we would never make business decisions about buying plywood when people spike their purchase of plywood in order to cover their windows because a hurricane is coming, right? We would recognize that that is atypical consumption due to a circumstance. And so I think we had a lot of atypical consumption. I actually don't think we will understand where, like if you think about any graph, if you zoom in on a graph, you can see a lot of variety, but if you zoom out, curves tend to be smoother. And I think because we're so focused in on the real activities that have existed within this time, to draw any big conclusions about human behavior at all right now, specifically consumer behavior in this conversation, is premature. I think we should be studying it, but studying it so that we can interpret it 5 years from now and 10 years from now to get any good insight into what's happening. And I think we, as researchers and as practitioners, can favor immediacy, and that can be problematic. And then just one more comment that I would like to introduce that I think was kind of discussed but not called out is, we talk about consumer behavior during COVID as if the experience of people during COVID was uniform. And we often talk about it in terms of people being at home, when in fact there were large numbers of people who were not at home. There were large numbers of people who were populating grocery stores, the people who were doing all of that delivery work, the people who were working in hospitals, the people that were working in other places. And I think that we've ignored, for two reasons. A, it was really, really hard to collect data about the people who were out being active. And B, it wasn't our interest. It's not as easy, right? We can collect online data for the people who are sitting home with computers, which means we're collecting more data about wealthy people, well-resourced people, and so on and so forth, and then drawing conclusions. So I think there's a lot more work to do and big questions to ask about human experience during COVID, and that there's a lot of gaps in even who we've asked about what their experience was.
Thank you very much for these two very important voices. Yeah.
I can be more agree with you because I think we need more data. And for example, I live in the countryside. We have a swimming pool, and of course my experience is not the same of the experience that a person that was working in a hospital or was in a house of 60 meters. So we need to do more research, and I think it's not the same if you live in a big city or if you live in a countryside, and even between the different countries. For example, in the case of Spain, the news were all the time speaking about bad things. So all the people was really frightened. And I think that other European countries did it in a different way. So I think we need to analyze deeper and with a bigger, longer time to understand very well what happens. And I don't know if you were going to introduce it, but I think now we are even in a worse situation because from the point of view of the economic, because I don't know, for example, here in Poland, but in Spain, our inflation is now around 10%. We have an energetic crisis. We have many familiar companies that are being by from Germans and French, because some familiar companies are a little bit worried about the situation. And now we have an opportunity to understand how we behave in that kind of difficult situation.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Thomas?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the issues and the problems I see is, first, talking about us as scientists, to change our mindset and integrate new instruments. Because, you know, when I'm talking about collecting data in an end, we does things in the daily business, in the economy. Most of you don't understand it, which models we are using in an end. So we have to bring these models we're already using to predict, to understand the behavior, into science. So it's also an education part. And then after that, we can think, okay, which data we need, how to collect it, which data is important to ask the questions. Because, like you say, it's so complex. But I think the main part, when we're talking about the future, it's really working more maybe with the economy. Let's bring the models into science, integrate them. Because we make wonderful things. We have wonderful instruments. So let's combine it. Let's work together and understand it as a common task to make the world a better place.
And I think also that we should also add one dimension of this analysis, because we also have to take in consideration cross-cultural differences. For example, with my students, we did the research concerning how the business changed concerning delivering the food to home. So because actually some of the stores were closed and so on, and there were some limitations, and definitely restaurants were closed. And we compare the consumer behavior on the restaurant market in Poland and in Italy. And there was a totally different situation. In Poland, we adopt very quickly the development of the companies which are delivering the food to home was like a booming at that time, and still it's very, very popular. And in Italy, no. Because of course there was some growth, but not that much, because Italy, they need to meet together. So they prefer to go to the restaurant to have a takeaway and then bring home and meet with the friends at home. So totally this kind of cultural issue strongly influenced on the behaviors of the customers, but also on the business. There was the same market, the same restaurants and so on, but the business model totally different because of the COVID. So also in where we have to take this in consideration, this cross-cultural differences on the market. So, any other questions, comments that anybody wants to add? So actually, I would like to a bit continue this discussion because maybe the question will be a bit different because actually I would like to ask are the customers and companies or the marketing activities are more ethical or less ethical during or post-pandemic times? So do you think that this kind of very strange situation, unusual situation, for us to be more ethical, or they just open the gate for non-ethical, even misbehavior or pathological behavior of the customers and the companies on the market? Thomas?
Yeah. We talk about it, I think, at the beginning. So what we see in the study, it's before we have the brainwashing, and now we have the greenwashing. So it's unethical, at least, yeah. You will find companies, they are ethical, correct, like Adidas. It was a surprise to get it now, to understand it, get these findings. But at least, this is the issue, this is the gap. They are unethical. Yeah.
In my case, I have a relation with many companies, and my experience is that our companies put persons first, so they were very ethically. But as I was saying, now the economic situation now is worse, and we have passed one COVID, and now we are with inflation, with the rates of interest very high, and with less money in the account, and I think the situation and the ethics will change during the month that are coming, and because the situation is worse. So in our case, the companies decide to send all the people home to be safe, and later they redefine how to work with a safe, with all the safe measures. But I'm sure that now that economic situation is we are going to see worse products and worse salaries, and the context is going, I think, is going to change.
Paweł?
In my opinion, the big problem with unethical consumer behavior is overconsumption. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, but maybe now I would present the great Polish sociologist Zygmunt Bauman, who said that that we are forced to the consumption, and I think that the scene is on the demand side of the market, because as Thomas said, the companies are responsible for this kind of behaviors. Marketers encourage people to buy, to replace product, to consume more, and it is there are marketing tools which try to encourage people to consume. And I think that there is, we called it with one PhD students, he is working on this kind of research, the ethical gap. There is a declaration of the companies from one side. They say we would like to be social responsible, and from the other side they do a lot to encourage people to consume, and there is a problem.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, at our departments, we did research, not really on the ethical, but something which is totally against, so about the consumer misbehavior on the market. And even we call it in Polish language the consumer pathological behaviors. And we have a chance to do the grant financed by the minister in 2015-2016. And then we also partly repeat this research during the COVID. And generally, the general conclusion is that because actually we have a different type of misbehaviors or pathological behaviors on the traditional market when we are visiting stores, and then when we are behaving on the online market. So in traditional stores, usually the number of the thieves in the shops was increasing. Around 5%. So it was really, really surprised, especially if we are talking about the food. But also what was observed, which was not observed before that strongly, also the consumption of expensive food products inside the store. So they consume and they left like without paying the store. There is also the situation that after the COVID, people back to the store, there is more situation that they create a mess inside the store, especially with the clothes or equipment, high-tech equipment, and they leave it. Well, actually, even they observe that the customer are more aggressive when they communicate with the store staff. So they behave unpleasant toward the store employees. Also, when we are talking about the banks or the insurance company, the number of the false documents delivering to the institutions is increasing, or even false ID card was introduced just to get the credit, just to get the credit card, and so on. So this was really also observed. And of course, there was like the concealing information about the previous treatment, which is also was increasing. In comparisons to this, when we are talking about the online market, definitely there was the number of the excessive customer claim was increasing. Also the aggression. So this is similar from this. So we are becoming more unpleasant to the. So we are more rude, even vulgar, and especially the online environment. Gives us this kind of that we believe that maybe we are independent, or the screen is like the safe for us. So that's why we can be more aggressive, and do not adapt to the rules that the store is introducing. So many times we click that we accept all the regulations, and then we are complaining for the company, and of course the spiral of buying at the auctions carried out by the customer in emotions. So this was was one of the biggest problems with the so actually we can say that because of the increasing of the pathological behaviors, so the number of the ethical issues is less. However, the research shows us very important indicators of the being ethical or behaving in a wrong way. So generally, we're able to identify the few factors that force us to misbehave. First of all, the previous experience. Those who experience in the family or they have around them that the people who misbehave. So for them, it's much easy to accept misbehaviors and also to introduce the behaviors by themselves. Then also another issue is the moral obligations. So if there is like a mechanism of the control. So if the moral obligations are on the high level, so we are more ethical. Want to be more ethical. Also, the issue of the perceived social control. So if we know that the society is not accepting this behavior, so we are more trying to behave in an ethical way. Like, well, we have the students here. So generally we know that the students are cheating at the exam, right? And it's not perceived as something negative or misbehavior. It's even perceived as a challenge that I can do it, or even more, that you are more entrepreneurial, right? So everything how we perceived such a situation. And of course the subjective norms and the attitudes of the customers on the market. And another issue what we also find out that because, for example, when we took in consideration the 10 models of the customers introduced by Schwartz according to the values we represent. So we were able to identify the three type of the customers which are more hedonic, those who are oriented on the power, and those who are oriented on the achievement. So these three, if such a values is dominate in your behaviors, such a values are represented by you, so you have high probability that you misbehave often on the market than the customer who are more focused on integrity, on the human values, and so on. So generally, this kind of issue, when we will be investigate this kind of problems or challenges, we have to take this also into considerations. Do you have some other comments concerning the ethical behaviors or less ethical behaviors of the companies or consumers on the market, not only because of the COVID, but also because of the financial crisis we observe right now? Any comments?
Maybe I will start to give some courage to the others. Edyta Lachowicz-Santos, University of Economics in Katowice. I wanted maybe to touch upon this ethical, unethical, but in the context also of what we were talking about yesterday. Smart cities, social inclusion, technological inclusion. Do you think that there is a role on the side of scientists, on the side of the university, that is going to be new in the future? I mean, the issues that became more important, no matter where you look at the globe, the pandemic, the war, the economic crisis that is happening now, the climate change that is affecting everyone, is kind of changing priorities. What, having those priorities, especially for young generation in mind, what role do you think scientists have in this? Especially if we talk about Cairo, the colleague is not here, it came to my head, okay, you are building a smart city. You were talking about the exclusion. How many people will be excluded from everyday activities, communication tools, purchasing tools? Is there any role that you see for scientists, for university, for researchers in this bigger picture? than publishing papers?
Thank you for the amazing questions. So I try to answer because, you know, it's a question, but you had 100 other questions inside, so it's hard to answer. But just coming back to yesterday, he was talking about Cairo and an end. But let's look like the master city near Dubai, Abu Dhabi, so which is ecological. They adapt scientists and sites. So it's an amazing city what's happened there. The scientists also living there. They're researching there. It is a completely new mindset what happens. You have electric cars. Everything is connected and so they educate, they invite people, students around the world. You also, as a tourist, you can visit the master city. And then they will educate you, show you the city and an end. So I think, of course, we scientists, it's our task to educate the people and an end. But also to dust this experience by our own, not just talking, you know. When I never visit the city, so it's hard to explain it, hard to teach you. But we have to experience it in practice and an end, using the things. And then, yeah, it's the same, education. Yeah.
Also, when we did this research concerning the consumer misbehavior, we combine also not only the research among the customers, but also among the companies, especially front office personnel. And then we recognize that, in fact, even the big international companies, they don't have the very well-developed policy how to handle with misbehaving customers. Usually, those front office personnel, they create some kind of the strategy by themselves. So the same company, but everybody deal with the misbehaving customer in totally different way. So actually, basing on this, we were able to introduce the whole program, what these companies that we interview should do, and how they should train, and what kind of policy they should have concerning how to manage these misbehaving customers and, in fact, converting them into the more ethical customers on it. So, again, the training, educating the customer and also the companies. Yeah, because we can help them a lot with in that case. Hmm?
I just wanted to give one example of overconsumption and unethical behavior in the cross-country studies. I don't know if you had a chance to see any TV when you were here in Poland, but one thing that would strike you are the amount of commercials of medical supplements. This is huge in Poland, and this is really exceptional. It's unbelievable how many unnecessary products pharmacies sell in Poland. It's
Okay, any other comments? Or we can slowly move to the actually the second very important topic for us, which is the consumer of the future and different segments that we will experience in 2, 5, or 10 years, and who will be the target. So. What will be the new trends in consumer behavior on companies, marketing of the company's activities in the future? Basing on your experience, on your research, what will be the future?
In my case, I can speak from the business point of view, not from the research. And I think the specialization is going to be really important because we have companies from everywhere that can sell in all the world. And we need very specialized companies that cover just one need or at least a family of products. So I think before we had companies that did everything, and I think that you have to do just what you know how to do.
Okay, thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. I will look at my research words. So my thing is to build a wonderful experience. So from this point of view, we will get the chance. We will get the chance. So it's depending from us if we adopt it or not, and where we adopt it, to building perfectly experience through the data we got from the people and the findings on the one side. And then the technology part we already also do. So we try to imagine how the future will work, how we will buy in the future, how the shops of the future are like. So we start also doing things like and develop things like the smartphone, O-phone. Maybe you heard about it. We does it in Malaysia and Singapore and projects. So we already can send taste through your iPhone, smell through your iPhone. So and things like that. We are able to do this. So and I think it will be the future, you know, also for B2B, but also for B2C, because maybe you can stay at home. You just imagine stay at home and you will buy some product, but you're insecure because you can't decide. Normally we need a good affect, a good gut feeling, and the brain says yes, it's a good decision, but you can't. So you have the possibility to try it before buy it, you know. And we are working on things like that. So you can taste it from your home, and you say, okay, it tastes great, I will buy it. Flowers, yeah, it smells like, or perfumes. It smells good. Oh, my wife, my man will love it. I will buy it as a gift. So things like that, and we're playing with things, and so we're thinking a lot about multi-sensory technologies, and try to combine it. And the idea behind that the whole work is to understand the customer as a hashtag. Don't misunderstand me, please. But through this hashtag, we are able to deliver the right experience on the right place.
Thank you. Paweł?
It is really difficult to answer this question. I could say that future consumer will be different, but it is difficult to say how will be the features, characteristics of the customer. And there is example with our studies on COVID. As you mentioned, it is difficult to say how COVID-19 influenced consumer behavior, how other circumstances, other factors. I think that we still should try to study and to build knowledge. There is not a complex knowledge, but it is better than don't have any knowledge. But it will be difficult to evaluate it because, for example, as you mentioned, we should study people and once again to make know about changes of behavior. But there will be next changes influencing customers, for example, war on Ukraine, the economic problem with our economy in Poland, and so on. So those changes will be caused by different factors, as I said.
So one question to you. Okay. One question to you, please. So should we develop completely new models? Because as I understand it, we have, as a scientist, and integrate much more factors because it's much more complex. Develop new models, new theories, and because we need it. You know, we have to integrate fields like Joanna was talking about it, and so it's a huge task, and it's of course interdisciplinary.
Our studies should be permanent, so I think that there is a way how to solve this situation, because everything is changing very fast. So yes, we try to do it, but we should also remember that models are built on previous studies. So there is a problem of scientific research that we are one step later than reality. So we could describe it, but it is difficult to forecast future.
And most because a lot of the research is based almost always in the past, and it's difficult to identify the trends. So it's like sometimes like research is in the past and business are in the future. And I think we have to work with what kind of methodologies we can work on it.
Yeah, and I think that, well, because actually the problem is more deeper. So because from one side we are talking about the very attractive segments of the customers for the business, and we should focus. Like, for example, we can talk about the baby boomers, so those who are just finishing their careers. They have very good income. The income is very high. They are very active. They are very interesting to, especially in different kind of the services, tourism, and so on. And actually soon they will be, as we call it, active seniors, so with a stable income, but they want to be excluded from the market. Like, for example, when I observed my grandmother or grandparents, after they work, they were almost excluded. Right now, they want to be permanent contact with the different markets. They want to educate. They want to experience. And they want to really have the hedonism of the third age. Even we are talking about the silver economy. And so definitely this kind of segment will be growing, and a lot of companies can find the benefits from this segment. Also, we can say that one of the interesting segment will be permanent singles, or sometimes we call it smart kids. Well, because mostly when we are talking about the traditional families and so with the kids, and we have very good, very big group of the singles, when they can only focus on themselves, they spend money on satisfying those needs. So, and they also require different products and different approach on the market. Then also the green customers, when we are talking about the sustainable development. So even right now we are talking about the lifestyle on sustainability and ecology. So it's not only that I buy and consume ecological product, but also concerning how I live, if I go to the gym, if I have really healthy life. All the services around it, they require complex offer to this customers. Also the customers who design luxury, and I'm not talking about the rich customers, but the middle class, which are at least from the luxury brands, they wanted to have even the small products, but just to show that at least that the status on the market. But when we are going also to the global sphere, definitely we can say that the Chinese dreamer, so really developing middle class in China, which are it's a huge, because of the milliards of the people living there, so there will be huge potential market, and the research showing that they are not looking for the Chinese products, they are looking for the Western Europe or US products, so they want to have something different, which also show the status. Also, we are talking about the developing South, so this is Africa tries to develop, Asia becoming new center of design, South America developing and very heavy natural growth. So this is also the emerging but very, very important markets. Or as we are talking about the Hindu entrepreneurs, so very well educated, very entrepreneurial, very high-tech oriented. So again, very, very interesting segments of the market. And on the other side, apart of these segments, we can talk about the new trends in consumer behavior. Like we are talking about the globalization, especially Generation Z, which will be more and more global. But at the same time, we observed the more ethnocentric attitudes, especially in Europe, and even European Commissions want to introduce like European ethnocentrism. The concept is very idealistic because we don't have really like the European product. We have the national product, so which will be quite difficult. But at the same time, cruelization of the consumption, which is really, really heavy phenomenon. Then we have homogenization of the consumption, when we can trying to eliminate the border between the gender, between the age, between the social classes, but at the same time, heterogenization consumption, because the offer is such a wide. Also, we can talk about because when we are talking about the virtualization of the consumption, but at the same time, there is a quite big market related to the digital abstinence. And we can observe, even in Poland, there is a lot of companies that are offering the services. Even the hotels are offering the vacations without any telephone, internet, and the TV. So just really to contemplate and to get a rest from all the information that coming through the social media and the internet. Also, I think that the concept of the prosumption will be bigger and bigger as thanks to the internet, we are more used to create the products by ourselves. And I think that also especially among the younger generation, this ethical aspect of the consumer behavior will be more and more important. Any question, any comments based on that? About the segments and some new trends that we can observe on the market. Yes, please. Who has the microphone?
I'll just introduce into the conversation co-creation. I think co-creation and co-created services experience and even products is definitely something that exists, but I think the future consumer, if you think even the language we use of the consumer being the consumer, which presumes that the producer is the producer, and I actually think that's an old model, and I don't think it will hold through the 21st century of there being producers and consumers. And we already know that in practice, but still it's so seeped into us in terms of the metaphor of what the marketplace looks like. And I think eventually, even someone said, we won't know who our targets are. And if you think about that metaphor, right, that the consumer is a target, like someone we're hitting at, right? We're shooting at them, right, and trying to hit them. That made a lot of sense when we were in a producer-consumer model. But I think that effectively that is going to switch. And I think that the traditional producers are actually the targets. And I think that the people who are shooting are going to be the traditional consumers. And that will change substantially the way that businesses need to view their role. And it's a subservient role to the consumer, which is a huge flip compared to what was a hierarchical role where the producer was running the marketplace and the consumer was adapting to what the producer bought and brought into it. And I think we'll see that flip. And I think research is as a result to the question of do we need new models and so on and so forth. I think it's going to blow up the models that we have. I think it's going to blow up what you were talking about, the difference between interpretivism and positivism, and also and I don't want to go on and on, but I think it also requires us to think about how we view a successful academic. Because as of right now, it's publishing multiple papers in high-quality A journals, international journals, and if 98% of the papers or 90% of the papers need to be positivist, and yet we're saying that we need to do different kinds of research, you're not going to get a lot of academics who are going to make choices to do this new kind of research if it is going to be an uphill battle to get published. And so you have academics who are going to have to leave the academy in order to do the kind of rigorous research that needs to be done, which means there is this other place that research is going to need to be done. So there's huge systemic changes that are going to need to happen that I think will take much longer than we think. We think that this is all going to move quickly, but people do operate in some ways in their self-interest. So it'll be interesting to see.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that. So completely true. We don't have to see them as a target. That's you know, we have to work on it to understand on the one side the customers with the right data, but also win trust, yeah, and to build up in a relationship that they give us the data and we deliver the right experience at the right place. So I think it will be in the future an important thing. And of course, it's hard, also for me, like you say, because, you know, we publish things and then have ideas about future markets, theories, models. We try to also experience by myself, to publish it in journals, international journals. And they withdraw it. And I ask them, okay, because why? Because it's not scientific enough. I say, what does it mean? And they say me, this is science fiction what we are writing about. I say, hey, come on, it's a high quality scientific paper. So you know, it was a subject. It's amazing what happens. So yeah, we have to change our minds, get more open, and rethink also science. Being an academic, and what does it mean, and how will the future looks like? So yeah, interesting points.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other question or comments? So if not, I would like to make some short summary, maybe not the summary, but actually I would like to just put some thesis on the table that we can think about it, about the new customer or future customers. And we believe that the future customer will be more multicultural customer because it's functioning in this multicultural environment, and the internet is creating such an environment. There will be the customer who will be more aware of the rights on the market. So the more and more educated customers, and not that they are only aware, but they will know how to get these benefits from the rights that they have. So they will be fighting somehow with the companies. Generally, customer will be very critical against this, what we are as a company we are introducing to the market, but also what the policy of the local authorities of the state. Definitely the customer would represent high mobility, and I'm talking about the mobility in the space and also in the social life. So you can grow very quickly, but also it will be the possibility that you will fall down. There will be more focus on relations between the human and nature. So definitely the sustainable consumption will be more and more important for us. We will because sometimes people said that we are avoiding the social relations. Not really. We need the social relations, but with a different characters than the traditional one. When we satisfy the social relations in the families before, right now, for example, when we have the elderly people, they really require the social relations, but they going, for example, at the university of the third age, and they meet the people with the same problem, with the same values, and then they can satisfy it. Definitely desire of the internal growth. So we are not anymore we want to be the part of the society, but we really want to focus on our internal development. The changing of the phenomenon of the having instead of, we don't want to have, we want to use. So the concept of the sharing economy. Why I need to experience, I want to use it, then to have it. Of course, if I have it's fine, nice, but also I need to take care for it. So that's why the sharing economy is developing so quickly. Increasing the role of the free time. So we are aware that we want to reduce the number of the hours and get, of course, it's the consequences is also the decreasing our salary, but we have the benefits of the free time that we want to consume in our way. Definitely, we are looking for the strong experience, especially younger generation. We are even talking about the experiential marketing and so on, that we want to always experience, we want to feel some emotions. Everything what is exotic, what is unique is attractive. Otherwise, the young generation, they get bored very, very quickly, and they want to switch to another brand, to another job. And the most important value for us will be yachts, health, good looking, and good body conditions. And in fact, at the end of the conference, I would like to wish to all of you, be always young, be always healthy, be always very good looking, and of course, you have very good body conditions. So thank you very much, first of all, to my fantastic colleagues for your very big input and sharing with us your knowledge, your experience, results of your research, and also for the opening some new windows that we need to discover and we need to work on it. Also, thank you very much for the fantastic audience, all the professors, all the students. Thank you so much, and I hope that these 2 sessions were inspiring for you. And of course, we didn't solve the problem, but definitely we are aware about this problem, and it will be a challenge for all of us. Thank you so much. And right now, I would like to invite you for the second editions of the Economy Without Borders, which will take place next month, and we invite the professors and the researchers from North America and from the Asia. But of course, remember about the events tomorrow, because we will have a fantastic presentation, motivation speeches of our great guests that they will share you about their research, but from the totally different perspective, from totally different point of view, and hope that will really inspire for you challenge in your life. So thank you very much. Thank you.